There's an integrated system that puts people and human safety first and clears a way through the volumes of red tape that we've created that effectively blockades the most vulnerable people in our culture from the housing that they need at a price they can afford. And so the paradigm is safety and people first. And the first step is to acknowledge that when millions of Americans, at a growing rate that is estimated to continue, cannot afford traditional forms of housing and are currently being hunted like animals in some cases where sleeping in cars is illegal, sleeping on public land is illegal, sleeping in parks is illegal, and sleeping in private land is illegal, you are effectively turning human beings into criminals for meeting their most basic need to survive. Now, with the acknowledgement that this is a reality and that the responsible thing is to respond to that reality, comes a legal designation, a state of human emergency, an emergency protocol for low-cost housing, a distinction that creates a parallel track that has the primary goal of creating safe, legal housing for every American in the understanding that this is cheaper, healthier, safer, lower crime, and more humane for all concerned. The criteria for this type of housing, as distinct from our traditional building permit and voluminous building codes and all the various limits per square footage per house, etc., that are all basically designed to create million-dollar homes, is that the rental price for these units is $600 a month or less. Otherwise, it's not really emergency low-cost housing. $600 is already above the threshold that many of the homeless I interview in Marin County can afford. $300, most people say they would be in a place today if they could afford it for $300. 450 square feet or less in size. If you're going to step outside of the building code, you want to do it in a low-impact way, something that's better for the environment, something that's better for neighbors to look at, something that is not triggering the need for major engineering. And 22 feet high or less, that the roof would be 22 feet high or less. Now, a few other criteria might apply that could be flexible, but that basically we create a framework for understanding safe, legal, low-cost ecological shelter that is outside of the traditional status quo of delays, extensive hookup, and permit fees. Next comes the creation of a couple of legal documents that are very important. One is the lease and use of the land. Now, our GPS sensors are good enough that you can literally use a finely tuned GPS on a phone to get within 3 feet of a boundary, which means that we have the ability to walk to a corner of land within an existing lot, and click Mark. And then walk 30 feet over to another point in the land and click Mark. And walk over to another section of land and click Mark. And define via GPS in an integrated app an area of land within an existing area of land to lease, with a lease that survives the sale of the house, is up to 20 years in length, that has stable rents, its purpose being low-cost housing, and which can be recorded both on video and GPS, and that may have a buyback clause, meaning if for some reason this lease precludes the sale of my house, or the new buyer would like to return this as part of the developable land, that this lease can be purchased back for this price, and that the price can be set at a rate that covers the cost of moving the small structure to another location. So you have a lease, an area of land defined by GPS on phone and video, a clear agreement that is guided, meaning it doesn't let you leave things vague, which eliminates most of the conflict in poorly written contracts, and that the city has access to and blesses this protocol when it is used to provide emergency, ecological, low-cost shelter. Another very important part of the lease is the ability to define utilities in detail. Break out the cost of different electricity, water, etc., how they may be used. Is there a connection or not? Or is the house complete, is a little cottage or tiny house or trailer or tent or yurt, is that entirely self-contained? For this type of housing, the next thing is a no-fee same-day permit. Now this ties in with one of the services a city can provide to facilitate these in a way that is as safe and as helpful as possible for those that need them. And that is the retention of an architect who is available to participate in the choice of where a tiny house might be set, to consider any aspects, to help a client understand the various aspects. An architect usually has training in plumbing, electrical, and septic as part of their degree, so that you don't need a whole bunch of specialty consultants. It's absolutely huge to take away the delay factor. And with a tiny home with prefabricated and pre-engineered and pre-approved modules, an architect can visit 4 different sites a day and conduct extensive dialogue and consultation so that 4 people have the clear go-ahead of what to do and have their questions answered and can receive their permits every single day. Now the next thing, and this is a very big shift from current experiences in local building departments. It's a shift from reactivity to proactivity, to hindering to actually helping people. And it's the concept of pre-approved designs and pre-approved purchases and pre-approved products and clear specs. So I can turn to the composting toilet or to the septic point on the app And I can see I can buy this composting toilet which has these features. I can buy this composting toilet which has these features. I can buy this composting toilet and it has these features. Or I can put in a simple gray water septic system under these conditions upon approval by the architect. Or I can put in this system which is a pumped septic tank without a leach field, and I can use that system. But these are the various systems that each have a price point, each have a design, each are useful in different situations. You have the tiniest one, good for small spaces, etc. And I can pick any of those and know that my city has already approved it. It's good to go. Here's the price, here's the specs, here's the review, here's where to buy it. Good to go. Same with water. You can connect to city tap via an existing structure, via a reduced hookup, maybe free hookup with 1,000 gallons a month of free water, after which you start having to pay hookup and other fees. Can be a direct hookup, can be a submeter to the existing house, can be a rainwater collection system, can be a dry riverbed collection system. In the event of anything but tap water with pre-approved pipes, a reverse osmosis system that has been pre-approved. You can get this model, this model, this model, and this model, and your app will alert you you're at the 6-month point. You have to change this membrane, change these filters. You click when that's updated, and your water is safer than what comes out of local taps. Bill Gates was recently at a municipal level reverse osmosis system that takes toilet water and turns it into safer drinking water than what comes out of many of our taps. Solar power. You can connect electricity in this way, or this way. You can have electricity and solar, or you can have any of these solar systems configured in these ways. You can also do something custom that meets these specifications. Now, for the custom approach, there can be a fee, $500, $1,000, and we will develop a protocol that allows you to prove the safety of your custom feature, that it can meet these standards. And here are the different laboratories to send your water to. Here is how to validate the level of bacteria in the feces created by this septic system, etc., etc. So you have a results-based, rather than everyone has to do it the same way, everyone has to create the same results. This unleashes creativity. When you come to parking, understanding that right now on Amazon, there are complete independent units. $25,000, you can have a tiny house with composting toilet, with all kinds of amenities shipped directly to a site. Ready to go. But transportation is a possible bottleneck. The Amazon truck arrives, slides off the tiny house. How do you get it 300 feet over a fence, over a house, into the back garden? And what the city can do is A, contract with a crane company for a discounted rate, that you do all the craning for the tiny houses in our city, that you reply in a timely manner, you understand our safety protocol, and you do it for a discounted rate. Similarly, Helicopter. Large transport helicopter. When we're dealing with tiny houses, things weighing a ton, maybe 2 tons, you can transport something with a dual blade helicopter. And again, the city can line up 5 or 6 of these in a day that need transport and can manage the contract and have each person just contribute the individual cost, and 5 different people have their little cottages, their structures craned into inaccessible locations so that they can be built and constructed in a dry, easy location, and then just moved into position upon verification that they meet the basic criteria. Similarly, truck, trailer, and craning, etc. with an excavator, simply making that process easy since it's beyond the capacity of a typical homeless person or tiny house owner to be able to navigate that terrain. Parking can have 4 major ways of being addressed. 1, a carless location, a carless existence. So what does that mean? It means bicycle or electric bicycle. It means tricycle or electric tricycle. But all of that doesn't need insurance, doesn't need licensing, etc., and they just have to go under 25 miles an hour. Next comes a step up, motorcycle, again, no parking, electric motorcycle, no parking necessary. Then you come to Uber and other app-based navigation systems. You have walking, but let's say that you have a tiny house in a home that has extra parking and you want a car. Well, then you simply register that parking place as part of the rental agreement, and you register the car and that parking place with the city, and which verifies that there is in fact enough parking for someone to move on to this property with a vehicle. Otherwise, moving on without the vehicle. Now, integrated support for some of our homeless or people with disabilities that want low-cost housing. The app that navigates all of this terrain, records contracts, creates profiles, helps to document any abuses if and when they occur. This is our contract. This is a video of what's actually happening. That app is also used to provide integrated support for people with disabilities, for people that need help with cooking, for people that need therapy of some form. And you have a grid of this low-cost housing that's all on the app with names and profiles, etc., and that provides a portal for ongoing communication and support. Next comes the financing issue. Many of our homeless, for example, can easily afford $300 a month. A lot of them can afford $600 a month. However, almost none of them can afford the initial $30,000 infrastructure investment. Some can't afford the initial $5,000 infrastructure investment. And this provides a basis for the city to co-sign leases in the understanding that the city owns the lease. And every contract has a protocol of behavior. There will not be loud music played in the cottage, in this tiny house after this period. There will not be, nudity outside of the tiny house in view of these windows. So you have a specification of a contract of behavior that's spelled out in the app. And if that's violated, it's as simple as both the homeowner and the person living in the low-cost house have a copy of the app. So you simply just upload evidence of the breach of the contract, and the first step is an agreed mediation protocol. Now, if the city is providing a security of finance, is underwriting that this lease will be paid, they are the lease owner. And what it means is that if someone is removed because they cannot comply with the behavioral contract required by that property owner in order to allow a low-cost house, it means that that structure is now available for someone else. And that's great news for a city that is responsible for housing its homeless, anyone who is able and willing to take responsibility for keeping their agreement. So secured loans can be obtained by local banks, underwritten by the city, in the understanding that the city saves tens of thousands of dollars for every single person it places into a tiny house. And so it is in the interest of the city, it is in the interest of our homeless, and it is in the interest of local business and surrounding peoples that we have people able to afford to participate in our economy as opposed to being excluded and becoming a liability. So secured loans are integrated into the lease. Where is the money coming from? Does it have underlying city backing? What does the individual agree to pay on a monthly basis? What does the individual agree to make as a down payment or deposit? So you have a private contract. This entire thing can be managed by a nonprofit or the city. But you have a private contract that is underwritten, a little bit like an auto loan where the signer, let's say if the bank loans money, they own the vehicle and can retrieve the vehicle if rent and the agreed performance is not paid, is not followed through with. This completes a tenfold increase in speed and quality of life for our homeless being housed, while simultaneously creating a tenfold reduction in cost that is in everyone's interest.